in all of it. He can do whatever he wants. He's clearly musically talented, and he's got, a lifetime to keep developing whatever he wants to do. I'm sure he's going to come up with lots of things that will surprise a lot of people.
Have you thought about having him on the podcast?
Well, of course. We've reached out to him. He's been busy getting his record promoted and all that stuff. So if he has the time, it would be great to be able to have him come on. So it'd be a real honor to be able to speak with him because, as you said, we do have some things in common. It would be nice to be able to connect on that level. So hopefully it will happen one day, but, it's entirely up to him.
Do you know each other?
I've met him a few times over the years, but I have never spent any real significant time with him. So I don't know how much he would even remember of the times that we met. One of the times was at a golf course.
How would you describe your relationship with Ed?
Well, the thing is, he called our house out of the blue one day when I was 12 years old. And the moment that he came into the house and played some guitar and answered my questions and showed me some things up close, that was a life-changing experience. That right there would have been good enough. Somehow or another, and I don't even have the answer to this, somehow or another, he ended up becoming the producer of the very first thing that I ever recorded that was recorded in my dad's studio. And it was Ed and Don Landy working together, and we recorded a song called My Mother's a Space Cadet, and the flip side of that was Crunchy Water. Now, it was me and my 12-year-old friends, and I'd only been playing guitar for like 9 months.
Oh, wow.
I could barely play guitar, but here's Edward Van Halen producing this song with these 12-year-old kids. It was crazy. But he came to a show that I did at my school, a school talent show thing, and he brought a guitar because, well, he came there first, and my guitar wasn't staying in tune, so he left and went back to his house, got a guitar that would stay in tune, and then he ended up letting me have that guitar. It's kind of like a star-shaped guitar, like it was a very different kind of guitar than, the Strat-shaped kind of guitar. But anyway, those kinds of experiences, I didn't have any control over that stuff. That was stuff that I still to this day don't know how he ended up being the producer or how he agreed to do that or why that happened. But over a period of time, I would go and see shows and I would stay in touch with him over the years, and he would call me out of the blue sometimes. I never wanted to bother him, so I wasn't calling him a lot. But at the point when my dad passed away, he called me out of the blue. He was the first person that called me, and we spent a lot of time together that week that my dad died. From that point on, we would be in touch a little more frequently and sometimes play. He came to one of my shows, which was a total role reversal, where he came backstage and he was saying, hey, how do you play this one thing? You play in this really crazy part. What is it? And I showed him a piece from a song called St. Alfonso's Pancake Breakfast. I was playing a part on the guitar that was written for marimba, and it was never played on guitar by anybody in my dad's band. Even Steve Vai was like, that's not playable on guitar. And he was known for being like the stunt guitarist, but he couldn't play it. So I was, to my knowledge, the first guitarist who ever attempted to play that part. But I showed it to Ed, and he was like, that's nuts. I don't know how you could even play that. Now, technically, if he wanted to learn it, he probably could have played it. It's just a question of how much time are you going to put into that? Because it took me months and months and months to be able to learn it. But that was like one of those crazy moments where it was a total role reversal. Here he is coming to my show, coming backstage and asking me, how do you play that? It was like the Jedi mind trick or like, some thing where it was just like, it was so crazy.
That's amazing. And did you ever share the stage together?
A couple times. Once at an actual Van Halen show, which was in Indiana. I thought it was Indianapolis, but somebody told me it was Fort Wayne. But I played Led Zeppelin's Rock and Roll on stage with Van Halen at that show. But there were other times at some NAMM show things where I was on the stage at the same time with him. And there were just times where, at 5150 or other places where there was a guitar and we'd do some playing backstage. On the For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge tour, my girlfriend at the time was in a band that was opening for Van Halen. That was a band called Baby Animals.
Okay.
And backstage, several times, there would be like guitar jams and things happening. backstage. So there was plenty of times I got a chance to talk to him about different things, but I never really did get to talk to him in depth about the things that have always been the most interesting and intriguing to me, like Push Comes to Shove. That would have been a great treat to be like, okay, let's go back to the beginning with that one. How did that whole thing come?
Exactly. And how did you get him to play on that album that you haven't released yet? Like, how did that whole thing come about?
I just asked him, and he said he would do it, and I went up to 5150, and we recorded a couple of solos. One of the solos is a greatest guitar licks solo, where I said, let's string together a lot of your most famous licks and put them all into one solo. And so in that process, I was like, play the lick from Push Comes to Shove. He's like, I don't know how that goes. Which one? And I would play it for him. And he's like, why don't you fucking play it? You sound just like me anyway. So, but it was funny to see him actually do some, like, for example, the opening lick that he did on that solo. I never knew how he played it until I saw him do it that day at 5150.
Wow.
And it required him pre-bending a note on the G string with his left hand, and then on his right hand, he played a melody that he slid his finger across the string while he was still kind of manipulating that bent note. And by the time he finished the last note with his right hand, he bent the left hand note down. And that was how he did it. Now, when you listen to it, it sounds like something that you would do with a vibrato bar, but yet not, because if you tried it with a vibrato bar, you couldn't get it to sound the same way. But it had that same kind of quality to it. And when I watched him do it with his finger, then it all made sense. But I never knew that's how he did it until that day.
Wow, that's incredible. Did he ever play you some unreleased Van Halen stuff?
I did hear some things here or there. In one of my episodes about Fair Warning, there's a little short clip of an outtake, different solo from Hear About It Later, where it's a really cool solo, and you could tell that he was going in some different directions. That was on a tape that he gave me when I was 12, because we were talking about Fair Warning. And he had like a part of a work tape, and the tape that he gave me, he was showing me a part that I was supposed to learn for something on the My Mother's a Space Cadet recording that we were making. So on this tape where he's showing me how to play this part that he wanted me to play at the end of My Mother's a Space Cadet, it also had this one outro or alternate thing from Hear About It Later, and a couple other things that were just snippets of stuff like from One Foot Out the Door and things like that. So
sure. Now, obviously, there's a host of stuff at 5150. Many people have seen video and photos of it, of a wall of music that's all unreleased and it's all on tape. Do you think anything will see the light of day, or do you think that'll just kind of sit where it is?
I think it'll definitely see the light of day. It's a question of when will that be something that is a priority for Wolfgang and the rest of the guys, because emotionally it's going to be a difficult challenge for a while to go through that stuff. But I'm sure there's a lot of great stuff in there to be heard. But the thing with stuff like that is fans always want to hear whatever it is, even if it's not the greatest version of something. But the artists themselves might never have wanted it to be heard, so there has to be a certain amount of understanding and respect for that perspective of it. So I'm sure that Wolfgang and all the people involved will know what that level is supposed to be. I doubt they'll just be putting out stuff that is anything that was ever recorded just to hear it. They'll probably just choose the parts they think are the best and put those ones out.
Is there anything in particular that you're looking to hear or you think should be released that you know of?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it would be great to hear stuff that is from that, say 1979 to 1982 era. That seemed to be like a real peak era. All of the sounds he was working on, all of the new techniques and things. So if there are things that were recorded at that time, outtakes from Fair Warning or Women and Children First or anything from those early things where that kind of stuff could be discovered, of course, everybody would love to hear that stuff. But there could have been things that he recorded from any era where he was doing something that was really innovative and different. I know he had a couple of tunes. I heard him playing with certain kind of riffs that never became any song that ever came out on any record, but he was excited about one that was like a really super fast boogie. And there was some other one that he was working on one day at 5150 where it had a descending chord progression that he was struggling with. He was trying to figure out what to play over this. He wanted to write a melody over it, and he was showing it to me, and he was saying, I know what I want to do, I just haven't found what to do with it yet. He could have tried to work it out on the piano, but he was trying to work it out on the guitar, where he would play the descending chord part with his left hand, and then with his right hand he was trying to work out a melody that would work over it. But it was an interesting thing, and I don't know what happened to it.
Sure. And in terms of your last communication with Ed, do you remember what that was?
It was just really a call to say hello and see how things were going. And he had called me, and he was telling me he was feeling great. And we talked about trying to get together in a week's time or so, and we didn't end up being able to do that. But that was maybe, I don't know, 6-7 months before he passed.
Oh, wow. Now, how do you think he should be memorialized? Many people have talked about different ideas. What do you think, how he should be memorialized in California?
I think that's more of a thing for the Van Halen family to figure out if they want to be able to create some specialized monument or something. Fans would support whatever it is. You know, I don't know that it's up to any of us to make those kind of suggestions. And, you know, some people don't necessarily have that kind of desire to have something like that either. You know, like my dad was very self-deprecating, and when people say, how would you like to be remembered? He said, I wouldn't.
Oh, God. What about a tribute concert? Do you foresee that happening? And if so, is that something that you'd like to be a part of?
Well, I don't know that they would do that, and I think there's a number of reasons why the Van Halen camp would not want to do that. It's very difficult. I mean, nobody would ever be able to replace Edward Van Halen. So people can play his songs, but people can't play them as well as he can play them. And to play them as close to the way that he would play them, to me, would be the best tribute.
Right.
And there's such a small handful of people that could even possibly get close to playing it just the way that he played it. So to hear the music played not as Ed would play it, to me, is less interesting, because I just feel like interpretations of stuff and making it sound different than what it is, I don't know why the band would want to play the music that way. Maybe they would. Maybe that would be appealing to them. But I feel like the ultimate tribute is to play the music as spot on as it can fucking be played and say, this is why this stuff was so great. And if you have anywhere near the level of skill to do it, then you should be part of that tribute. But I just feel like it would take a while for something like that to come together and have people understand why it would be done and how it would be done. Because obviously there's a lot of different perspectives on it. There's a lot of people that would say, oh, of course you want to hear new versions, see how it became, you know, relevant to other generations and how they hear it or how they would rework it, you know. But that's just one of those things where, you know, I'm on the fence with stuff like that, because when it comes to my dad's music, I look at it more like it's classical music that's written very specifically to be played a certain way, and the music on the page will tell you that, you know. So in the same way that you don't have orchestras around the world changing parts and adding whatever they want into the music of Beethoven or Mozart, you know, it seems weird to take something that's so specific and say, oh yeah, let me change it. Like, you wouldn't want somebody to play Eruption and add a whole bunch of other parts in it that Ed never played, you know?
That's true.
You know, that's interesting. So I'm just curious what you thought about the Freddie Mercury tribute concert. And the reason I asked about that one is because Freddie had quite the unique voice. So there weren't too many people out there who sang like him, but they did do a full-blown tribute show with lots of different singers. Again, I was just curious how you thought that came off.
So the thing about the music of Queen is it is a little bit more easily open to interpretation, because it can be stripped down or changed and have the core melody stuff still be there. And even if you don't have the guy singing exactly the same, the emotion of what that melody is, if you're singing the right notes, but the guy has a different timbre, or anybody that's singing the song has a different timbre, it's still a possibility for the song to deliver the message. Now, it's very different when you're talking about super